down and 1 for the Aggies from the LSU 38-yard line. Sixth of 18 carries for another fighting Texas Aggie. And that will be the final play of the game.
It's amazing what one game can do for you in this sport. It's the ultimate small sample size sport, college football. And when you get that big win after a year of shittiness, it really changes the complexion. This is like in life, you're in a rut, you're in a dry spell, you're in a bad phase of life. Maybe a loved one passed away and you're recovering from that, mourning them. I hate to bring that up. I think that's the second time I've used that as an analogy. I need to stop it. Or maybe you've walked on hard financial times and money's not where you want it to be. You're spending more than you're making. It's been a bad few months for you. It's been a bad 3-month span for you in life. And you don't know how you're going to get out of this pit. You don't know how you're going to claw yourself out and feel normal again, feel good again. You feel a little bit depressed. You feel a little bit sad. But then something happens and you bottom out. You know what I mean by bottoming out? Like you can't get any worse. You can't go any lower. So you bottom out and then you rebound. And by rebound, I don't necessarily mean you make it all the way back to where you were when you were happy. By rebound, I mean you're going down and then the direction changes. You're going up. I feel like A&M did that. I feel like A&M hit the bottom with the loss to Auburn and the lackluster performance against UMass. And I feel like this LSU game marked the start of an upward trend for our Aggies. And of course, this is wishful thinking. I'm a sunshine pusher. Go look at my preseason videos. I had Texas A&M ranked in the top 5, I think. I predicted 11-1. I'm an idiot. So I'm going to look at things half glass full, usually. But I've learned some lessons this year, we'll put it that way. But I think that LSU win was the first of many dominoes that has to fall, or not necessarily has to fall, but that were in place to fall to lead Texas A&M back to success. Whenever I talk about dominoes falling, I think of the pool party because that was a legendary first domino. So consider this the pool party of the resurrection of the Texas A&M football program. So that LSU game, we'll talk about that game in a second. This is just my introduction here. I'm going to just say a few words, then I'll get into what I'm going to be talking about. LSU game, domino 1. Domino 2, transfer portal. Texas A&M was the first team to hit the portal. So, the first team whose season ended and players are more free to publicly announce they've hit the portal. Don't tell that to Alabama, though. They've had many people hit the portal. I'll get into that in a second as well. So that's another domino. The portal stuff's happening. We're getting some more data in terms of what to expect in this portal exodus or this portal era that we are now in. So that's started. That's a domino. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, the biggest domino that's probably fallen yet, well, I don't know. The LSU one was pretty big. It feels really good. We'll talk about that too. But a huge domino is Jimbo wasted no time ousting, I'm blanking the name, Darrell Dickey, offensive coordinator, whom I've questioned greatly on my show many times. Not that I don't respect him or don't, believe what he does can work. Just I literally don't know anything about him. I don't know his language. I don't know what he says. I don't know his philosophies at A&M. I know some of his old school philosophies that he's talked about publicly, but I don't know what effect he has on the day-to-day offense, exactly what he does for this program, because we don't get that access. I know that's been a topic of discussion on Twitter. Anyway, so it's been 3 days, 4 days since this game. and several dominoes have already fallen. Billy Lucci at Texags had already hinted that there would be little time wasted after this game, that we'd start to see things percolate, and he was not lying. In my opinion, every domino that has fallen has been positive for Texas A&M, and I can say this with my heart. I'm having fun again. Texas A&M football for the last 12 weeks, minus maybe the Arkansas and Miami games, and even those had question marks, but the last 12 weeks have not been fun. I was happy after we beat Arkansas. I wasn't too happy during that game. Maybe during a stretch where Damani Richardson did something crazy, but that was fun. But besides that and actually winning that in Miami, not been a fun year. I think you guys would agree. Looking back after a big LSU win, though, you really get to see some of the positives, which basically is the young guys stepping up into bigger roles and gaining experience. But this game was so desperately needed. This win was so desperately needed by this program, by this fan base, for the players. It was like cathartic. It was huge. It cannot be overstated. Another thing that I've used to describe situations earlier in the year as well. But we're back to that. We're back to these big statements, these big positive statements. And the LSU win was one of them. So what did the LSU win show us, give us, enable us to do? I think it just caused unity. It formed unity within the team, more so. I mean, we've heard time and time again from Jimbo that these players are together. It's just us outsiders talking that makes it sound like these players, this locker room is broken and segmented and poised to transfer. But I think after that field storming, what we've seen on social media with many players doubling down on their commitment to Texas A&M, some more so than others, some less cryptically than others, Chris Marshall, I think it just enabled that public outshowing, that public showing of love for Texas A&M by these players. It was a game of complementary football, a game of dichotomies, a game of, well, let's talk about that. In this game, there was finally complementary football between offense and defense. I think Jimbo alluded to that in the presser. Offense gave defense time to rest, unlike most of this season. Most of the season, the offense had very few sustained drives throughout games. Some games, they only had 2 or 3 sustained drives. Versus LSU, they were putting together sustained drive after sustained drive, giving the defense time to rest, regroup, recuperate, stay fresh. And it showed. Defense helped out in the scoring department. Defense got stops, gave offense the ball back. There's complementary football. It seems like throughout the year, offense would have a good showing, but then the defense would be lackluster, taking a step back. We'd get all the DJ Durkin questions. Or for most of the year, defense was okay and offense was terrible. But in this game, they both put it together for a full game. Aside the offense coming out the second half, got maybe a little bit too cute with the play calling. I don't know what happened there. But for most of this game, complementary football, offense and defense. But that's not the only area where I saw complementary football being played. On the defense alone, at the game, did not think the pass rush was particularly good or effective. And at times it wasn't. But that's because I think DJ Durkin's is fairly conservative play caller, not dialing it up the blitz with his slightly underperforming linebackers at this point in the year. I guess you would say they're just slightly underperforming, and the depth is certainly not there, especially after some of these transfers, or one of these transfers. We'll talk about that. But I guess he's not very aggressive, but the 4-man front, the 3-man front, you had to have a spy in there. Defensive end, usually LT Overton, Eni White were spying. You weren't getting much of a pass rush. And, Jaden Daniels had some success in the air. But a lot of those plays where he had so much time, where I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if you give him this much time, they're going to make a big play. You can't not make a big play with this much time. There were several instances throughout that game where even when he had that much time, He wasn't finding anything downfield. The secondary had the front sevens back. Front six, talking A&M here. But the secondary had their back. Not coverage sacks, but coverage, forcing the run, forcing a not so effective quarterback run game. A thing that A&M struggled with throughout the entirety of this year was quarterback run, quarterback scramble, bad discipline on the spy. But this game, the secondary helped out. The spy was fairly effective, at least at hurting the quarterback's angles and preventing huge runs. Not necessarily always chasing the quarterback down, but definitely forcing the angle to where these things weren't ridiculous. But then there were times that the secondary was helped out by the front seven, because the front seven did get some pressure at times throughout this game, despite what I maybe had initially thought coming out of that game after rewatching it. There was some pressure in there. Walter Nolan got his sack. There were some dudes in the backfield wreaking havoc. Antonio Johnson was all over the place. Just a textbook tackler, a textbook player. I mentioned in my post-game emotional video just how awesome it is that he showed up and still played this game, because he certainly did not have to. Same goes for A-Chain on the other side of the ball. Another dichotomy, another parallel here. A-Chain and Antonio. Neither of these guys had to play this game, but both of them came up huge this game. Both of them set the tone, and of course Damani was involved too. I think Damani did have to play, though, to boost his stock, and I think he definitely did boost his stock this game. But I'm talking about the two guys, one on offense, one on defense, that did not have to play for selfish reasons. I don't know if that game raised A-Chain's draft stock. It definitely built hype, and I guess that by default will raise your draft stock. I think A-Chain will still be looked at as a tweener. His size is pretty small. Probably rounds 4 or later kind of guy. But he didn't have to play, because I don't think this game changes that. And those guys led the team, showed what it is to be an Aggie, what it is to be a bought-in player, the plays for his teammates, and in doing that, increases his value, because you want a teammate like that if you're an NFL team. You want someone that's going to show up when, he doesn't have to show up, when no one's looking, so to speak. So that was a game of parallels and dichotomies and complementary football, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to call it, just pairs, things in pairs, whatever. Great game. The atmosphere was top-notch. The band was amazing at halftime. They did the four-way cross. I always forget what it's called. Four-way cross with the Strategic Air Command March. My favorite, most of y'all's favorite, I'm sure. But just a very pleasant evening out at Kyle Field. 93,000. Didn't pack it out, but I understand. 4 and 7. Students are home for the holiday. It was a student section really that wasn't full. The very top section, the very top portion of the student sections were not filled. But that's understandable. 93,000, I am not complaining. That's a damn good atmosphere for a damn bad team at the time. But Kyle was alive and well, and talk about the field storming. A lot of Longhorn Twitter users will talk shit about it. Oh, you stormed the field after a 5-7 season. I'll tell you this: the players appear to love the field storming. All the pictures that we see of players just smiling ear to ear. The jersey swap of Kyle Field is players getting core members memorabilia or core members things. There was Damani was holding a sword. And of course, remember last year, Calzada wearing the hat in the locker room. Countless pictures, smiles, hugs, countless stories, social media stories. I think it's a bonding experience, a becoming whole, student body and player. I think it's awesome to see. I think the players are really into it. I think it was a deserved field storming. Just the release after such a rough year. So I'm all about it. Hope we get one a year. Actually, I hope we're in a position where when we beat these big teams, it's no big deal, and we wouldn't even think to storm the field. But I think for where we are, it was a good thing. So yeah, feel really good after that game. Really, 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 really good. Better than I have all year, and I'm sure you do too. But the next day, maybe, I think, the transfer portal announcements started rolling in. And none of these are necessarily a huge surprise or a huge shock or even a huge detriment besides maybe one that I'll mention. But of course, earlier in the year, I forget his name, the backup punter entered the portal, and the overreaction was strong for that. So we knew that whenever A&M players start hitting the portal, that it was going to be overblown. And it's happening everywhere. It's not unique to A&M. Everybody that has players that were once highly sought after recruits that aren't playing, they're going to have transfers. But we have the backup punter, Caden Davis, backup kicker, but the starting kickoff guy. Rocket leg. He was great at kickoffs. Going to miss that, but I think he'll land on his feet. LJ Johnson, that sucks. He was very hyped coming in. Didn't see him too much this year. Something happened in the middle of the year. He got buried behind Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss, and I get it. You have 3 guys that are all around your age. You need somewhere where you can play. And he'll probably play somewhere good and be really good somewhere. But I have a feeling Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss will be really good here. So that's our 3rd, 4th string running back. Elijah Judy, I don't know if he ever even saw the field for any meaningful stretch besides just a play here or there. Just a backup edge guy, of which A&M has a lot of when they're healthy. And then the one that I'm kind of bummed about the most, though we really didn't see him play, was Ish Harris. We saw a lot of Montrell Harris, the 2 young linebackers, but we saw Montrell play. We didn't really see Ish play too much, but in such a position of need, I feel like you want every little piece you can grab, and it really does suck to lose him, even though he wasn't really in the 4 or 5 deep. He was young. He could have become something. Makes me really want Edger and Cooper to declare he's staying more. And that's it. That's all we've had so far. But compare that to other programs. A&M season is over. Their players are free to roam about the cabin. They can declare what they want to declare. Portal. That's pretty much the thing you would declare, or you're coming back. But Alabama's already had 6 people into the portal, and their season's not even done yet. And no one's, condemning Nick Saban, losing the program, dead culture. It is just the world we live in, my friend. This is how it is going to be. And it's going to get a lot crazier than it is now. Go follow Hayes Fawcett on Twitter. It's like every 10 minutes he's cranking out a new portal announcement. It's insane. And we're not even, half the teams aren't even done playing yet. Over half. So yeah, it's going to be crazy. But I think we'll retain a lot of the starters, as I've been saying. A lot of people who you've been seeing play for A&M this year, they'll be retained. I don't think they're going to want to. They have such an opportunity here. I don't think they're going to want to. They're not going to want to jump ship, especially these offensive guys. A lot of the defensive guys have already experienced and played many games. They're in the rotation. Why would you give up your spot? And plus, this LSU game is so sweet because it shows what you could have been. It shows what you can be. The only people that might not be back from that game, Damani, Antonio, A-Chain. I think Layden comes back. But everyone else from that game, they're back. Unless they transfer. So we're hoping that none of these rotational guys transfer. I don't think many will. I think if I had to put some arbitrary number on it, I'd say A&M retains 90% of these starters. 90. So that means I'm projecting that maybe 1 or 2 will be gone. Who will they be? I don't know. And I don't mean just starters. I mean rotational guys. I wonder how Darrell Dickey getting fired or being let go or released, whatever happened, I wonder how that affects these offensive players' decisions. I wonder how that affects Evan Stewart. I wonder how that affects Connor Wigman, the running backs, the O-line. I wonder how that affects that decision. I'm pretty sure they knew they weren't good. I'm pretty sure they knew they were underachieving. So maybe they look at it as a positive, but a lot of times players bond with coaches. So I don't know. Nothing immediate has really happened from it in terms of transfers or portal announcements or anything like that. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I have a feeling it's going to be looked at as a positive because, like I said, they knew they underperformed. And there's a lot of options out there for guys they can bring in. And I think that can, galvanize the decision even more to stay. But I really like the timing of Dickey getting fired. And it just seemed like an obvious choice, an obvious, you want to call it scapegoat, fine. Something had to be done. In my fantasy league last year, in my fantasy football league last year, some inactive team made a trade with a contender. Out of nowhere, he hadn't played in weeks, and all of a sudden he trades his best player to the contender for like some decent player. And I as the league GM, decided it would be an appropriate punishment to remove him from the league because all the players kind of pointed at that as part of the league's downfall, the unbalance of the league. And it's not a one-to-one comparison here. But I, as the GM, thought that removing him would be the best option for the league going forward. It was just something that you had to do. It was a decision that had to be made. That's probably a terrible, terrible analogy. But I just felt like something had to be done. And something immediate, something firm, and something that showed that you're not messing around, that you acknowledge there are issues. And I don't know if this means Jimbo's going to get rid of the play calling duties. I don't point to this as an indicator for that. I point to this as an indicator for a desire for change, which is, I think, the hugest domino that you could have ever seen fall. I just think that indication is so huge. But I think other things have happened that lead me to believe that Jimbo may give up the play calling duties. I don't know which radio show it was on. I should have looked up my source before I started talking about this, but I didn't and I won't. But Jimbo was on some show this week and someone asked him what he thinks about coaches going into more of a CEO role. And his answer was, you have to these days. You have to. I mean, especially with all the portal and NIL stuff that you have to keep track of. You have to go into more of a CEO role. Oh, are we going to believe what Jimbo says? I don't know. But, it's a positive sign. I think it's a very positive sign. I think that's an acknowledgement there. I think if he wasn't in that headspace, he would have just said, no, you don't have to. Other teams have had success with play calling head coaches, more involved with the down-to-down basis of the team. But no, he was wholeheartedly, you have to. And earlier in the year, someone asked him if his ego would stop him from taking a step back from the play calling duties. He goes, no, you can't have ego. And, we're taking everything Jimbo says with like a whole healthy serving of salt. But I think those are positive quotes to navigate. So I think that this Dickey out situation is one of the most positive developments we could have seen right out of the end of the season. So who's the guy? Who do we get next? I'm going to leave that to you guys. I want y'all to comment which OC you think Texas A&M should pursue. The Dan Mullen noise has quieted. I don't want Kendall Briles. I don't think anybody else does. That's the name that's been tossed around. My dream candidate is Joe Brady, though I think that's a very, very long shot, just because of obviously what he did at LSU in a very, very short amount of time when the team already had talent. And he was able to go in and just tweak it up, and then it blew up. So I think there's a very similar scenario here where these receivers come back, these young receivers, if somehow Chris Marshall comes back, if somehow Anias comes back, it's going to be maybe the best wide receiver core in the SEC. Is that a stretch? I don't think it's a stretch. With Evan Stewart and Moose coming back, you have Noah Thomas kind of in a wide tight end kind of role where he's just blocking people. He was blocking Perkins all day last weekend. So who's the guy? Y'all tell me. My dream guy is Joe Brady. I know he has an NFL job right now. I don't know if he wants to get back into recruiting. But hell, A&M has a lot of recruiting already. I mean, maybe he doesn't have to have the hugest role, but I think Jimbo demands that of his guys. But, we're going to have to think outside of the box here. So, who knows? Who do y'all want? Y'all tell me. Those are kind of the hot topics right now. It's going to be the portal. It's going to be the OC search, retaining this recruiting class. Insiders say that these recruits that we have now are locked in. That includes Hicks. Obviously, we're going to be looking at Anthony Hill's final decision. It doesn't look good, in my opinion. Maybe I'll bring y'all some more recruiting content in the future, but right now, I feel like A&M's in a decent position to keep everybody they have, especially with Jimbo's track record of finishing very strong. There are going to be names popping up that you never saw at all in the buildup of this class. There are probably going to be a couple of flips out. I expect that with the season that Texas A&M had. But shit, if Texas can go 5-7 and get a good class, why can't A&M do it? Especially coming off that huge last win of the season. So obviously, we're going to keep an eye on recruiting. We're going to keep an eye on the portal. We're going to keep an eye on the OC search. Will that be the only firing that we see right after the season? I haven't checked Twitter since I started this video. Maybe I should, just in case something breaks right now, because things are moving pretty fast. So let's get a quick peek at the Twitter. I'm right here on the cellular device. We're going to check some of the more notable Aggie pages. It doesn't look like anything has changed. I think Chase Lane might be gone. Looks like he might be... Oh, Chase Lane to the transfer portal. I think that's good for Chase. Leave it at that. That's the big news. So A&M gets their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th player. They tied Alabama in the transfer portal. Let's see if this one gets overblown. But all right, guys, that's all I have for you. I just wanted to kind of give a lay of the land. Coming off the big win at LSU. Just kind of getting our bearings after all these big announcements that have been happening. And it's the offseason, but I'm not stopping the content. I'm going to be bringing you guys weekly videos and then some. There's going to be a guaranteed weekly video like this one. Lay of the Aggie Land is what I've been calling it. I give you a lay of the land. No, the lay of the Aggie Land. And I'll be throwing some other things in there. I might do, after the signing period, I might do some player film reactions. React to some of the recruits and what their tape looks like. There won't be a lot of them to go through this year, so that's not too bad. I might do some live shows for y'all. I know some of y'all have been asking for that. Sounds like something that I could get into. Get y'all involved with the show a little bit. But yeah, guys, I'm here for the off-season content. This is where we really break things down, maybe do some reviews on the season. Because this is a huge, huge off-season, and it feels like every off-season's been huge for the last few years. After 2020, lost a lot on that team. You wanted to see how they would put it back together. 2021, you ended the season on a pretty low note. You wanted to see how they rectified that, what happened at quarterback, that huge recruiting class. And then, of course, this down year, everything we've been talking about. And it feels like it's been building up every year. Like the urgency has stepped up every year to where now Jimbo he's not on the hot seat, but he's on the hot seat to go onto the hot seat. Yeah, we'll go with that. So I'll be bringing you guys content. Please subscribe, guys. I'm trying to build the bigger base here, get some of you guys involved. I try to respond to every single comment that I can. Sometimes there's a lot of them on videos. I might miss some. I'm sorry. But I really do try to respond to each one of y'all's comments. So give me your OC preferences. Subscribe, guys. Subscribe. Want to bring us all together, talk Aggie football together. I will see you on the next one. Gig 'em.